Welcome to Grit and Gravitas with Ann and Annie, bringing you savvy, spirited stories of success. We're excited to deliver 30 minutes of inspiration, impact, and goodness. We'll be bringing you guests and friends from around the country who have very special work and personal journeys. I'm Ann Deeter Gallaher, your co-host with Annie Carnathan, and this is Grit and Gravitas. Let's go. Grit and Gravitas podcast studio, best part of the week. Annie Carnathan, how are you today?
I have never been better. How about you, Ann?
I'm feeling pretty good today. We are very excited to have Monica Gould in the podcast studio. Love the colors. It is a pop of, I want to say, is that a jacket from China?
Yeah.
Wow. Monica Gould is president and CEO of Strategic Consulting Partners, and a lot of people know who you are. They're I'm sure unsure of the depth and breadth of your services, but she is the queen of just about everything. And we have grown up in business almost together, side by side, and I'm super blessed that our paths crossed about a year and a half ago, maybe almost 2 years ago. But you have so many topics. Annie's going to try to rein me in and confine us to 30 minutes, which is, you're good at that.
Goes fast.
Yes. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I've heard so many great things about your podcast. I've watched your podcast, but I've heard so many great things from your listeners, so it's exciting.
Well, we really had a podcast before the podcast because we had so many conversations going on. But so the one requirement, we love to share at least 1 to 3 business vitamins throughout our 30-minute episodes. So I know we're going to benefit from a lot of yours, Monica. And our audience is largely women in business, but we do, because we are mothers of sons, it is required listening in our families for all the men.
Awesome.
But give us a short runway on your background, how you came to your management consulting business, because you're really top of your game. You're a big dog.
Oh, thank you, Ann, and that's really kind of you to say. Sometimes as women we don't always look at ourselves in that way.
I know, but
I do
I'm
appreciate
affirming
it.
you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So my background was really in operations management, and after I got my MBA from American University, I went to work for MCI Telecommunications Corporation, whereby I, applied my MBA skills, and very shortly thereafter, I moved very quickly in the organization to manage operations for all small business operations for customer service centers, telemarketing centers, and managed over 5,000 people in that role. But as a mother of 2 young daughters at the time, it was a real big challenge for me to maintain that level of engagement at work and be able to manage my motherhood. So I made the decision to parlay my skills that I gained at MCI and start my own business in 1994. So that's that was the impetus of starting Strategic Consulting Partners. And back then, it wasn't Strategic Consulting Partners. It was really more of a individual contributor consulting firm that we've parlayed into what we have now.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So that's a parallel to you, Ann, a little bit with your 3 sons and going into the workforce in your
making
own,
it work. Yeah, trying to fit in motherhood and still
and the priority.
contribute.
Right. Yeah, that's impressive.
So you have, we often laugh when we first started working together. When you say management consulting, there's nothing really sexy about that term. And you try to figure on the PR side, all right, what's the media angle? What would make people be interested in management
What's
consulting?
the differentiation? Because that's a boil the ocean term.
Yes,
right. That could mean anything, literally, which is not good as a business.
But when you drill down to
brand.
what you do and the level and size of the companies, from federal agencies to state associations, agencies to corporations, because you've got some very large publicly traded corporations. When you really think and stop to think what management consulting, you have a window to the soul of a whole lot of companies.
We do.
Really, talk us through a little bit about that, of what you see when you're in there and some of the incredible opportunities that you bring to these very large organizations.
So, with my experience in operations, and when I say operations, one of the critical areas was really human resources and managing people and making sure that we got our people engaged,
right?
That they were working at the highest level of productivity, that they were well trained. So those are the skills that I took into the management consulting business, and really being able to build a strategy around human capital and how you build the capacity of your human workforce to really drive productivity and gain. So I did that with an MCI, and I took that same skill set and I started marketing that and building that within small nonprofit organizations, small business at first. The successes there were then leveraged and parlayed into larger contracts. And we were fortunate enough about 10 years ago to get into the federal market. And within the federal market, this building human capacity and building organizational capacity became a real buzzword. And employee engagement is critical because that is the number one and the most expensive part of any corporation's budget is your people. And if you can get more out of them, isn't that better for the bottom line?
Right.
But it's also the right thing to do. So that's how we really started looking at our management consulting business, is how do we build organizational capacity? How do we do it from a strategy standpoint? How do we do it from an operational standpoint? But most importantly, how do we do it from a human capital standpoint? How do we get the most out of our people, keep them engaged, keep them, employed with us, and move them up through the organization so they want to stay with us for years to come and can contribute in better ways in the future.
So I think if they're fulfilled, Monica, and I'm interested in, whether it's a small nonprofit or whether it's a federal agency, the thing in common are people.
Yes, absolutely.
You have to connect with people. And they're the same people, whether they're large or they're small, doing the exact same things we're doing. And it's that alignment. It's the philosophy. It's the ability to say what's important to me is important to you. Ann and I are not alike, but we're very much alike in the things that are centric to why we're doing this to help women in business. And so I'm interested in that little bit of disconnect, Monica, right, between leaders in the company and you, who really are the front lines of developing their employees. Right? And so isn't that like a baseline communication that's imperative? And how do you intake that? Because we're in the same situation, right? We could be top to top for a decision made, but it's the whole team that has to develop together and build those interactions. So how do you compensate for not being with the frontline employees directly?
So here's the interesting thing, Ann, is that we also support the frontline employees in some of the work that we do. So leadership development is a critical piece, and leadership encompasses training. It encompasses coaching of leaders to teach them these critical skills of how to engage employees, how to keep employees, how employees like to be treated, and helping them to coach and mentor their employees so that they can retain them and get the most from a productivity out of them. So part of that, though, is in order to support those leaders and those organizations, we have to hear from the front line of employees. So we do a lot of organizational assessments in which we go in and we learn directly from the employees what's working, what's not working. And 85% of employees leave their organizations because of leaders, because they don't like...
100%, they fire their boss, right, Monica?
Yeah, they don't like
fire
it.
Their boss. That's right.
They vote with their feet. They leave.
Right.
And so if we can build the competencies of those leaders and build those engagement skills and that productivity mindset, and not productivity in terms of churning out work, but productivity in terms of giving people great work that they can be successful in, that they feel recognized for, they feel valued in. This is that self-actualization is what we all as human beings strive for. We want to do meaningful work.
Right.
We want to be valued. And so if
Recognized.
recognized and appreciated. And so
Business vitamin. Yeah. Multivitamin right there. And honestly, Monica, for women in business, for any leader, you, to me, just quintessentially described what a strong, great leader is about.
right.
It's about the people on the team. That
When you say, they want to be recognized, we CEOs, leaders, business owners might dismiss some of that as maybe like minutia. It's not. It's not a outward facing. I just sent both team members a handwritten note last week because they had done extraordinary work. I received an award, would not have been able to receive it without them. They're behind the scenes doing stuff. And they both sent me this, separate from each other, this wonderful text, like how meaningful, there wasn't a gift card in the note, but it was, how meaningful to me their passion and investment of themselves and their, time that they give to the company.
That's priceless.
And I know how valuable that is because I know how I like to receive things like that. But I probably underestimated how important that was to hear. The salary is great, but it's also very important to just hear, you hit it out of the park. What a great job.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, the number one thing we can do for our employees is thank them.
Yep.
Thank them for their service, thank them for their work, and then the number two thing we can do is empower them. Give them the ability.
Business vitamin. Good point.
Give them the ability to do what you hired them to do.
That's sometimes hard.
It's very hard. And I'll tell you, it's hard for me.
Yeah.
And I know I struggle with it every day because I'm a little bit of a control freak in terms of quality for my company. And I struggle with this. But I know that I get more out of my employees. They're more engaged. They're more excited. They produce better work when I empower them and allow them.
When they feel that you trust them.
Yes,
to do,
absolutely.
Or even trust them to fail and to get back up and to learn from that.
Well, and you have to fail forward quickly. And
Yes.
people that are more secure, that are recognized, if we all think we're not failing, we're not succeeding.
Right.
But I send my son a quote at college every day just to sort of reach out. As a way to say
sweet.
good morning or whatever. And one this week was paraphrased, and it said, the people that don't exert influence and power feel as if they don't have any.
Absolutely.
They can't be empowered if they don't feel as if they
Right.
don't have a voice,
Right.
if they don't have a meaningful contribution, if they're not recognized. And we sit here and go, well, duh, but oh my, those soft skills
Yeah.
are, to me, at the base of being essential, because I think from a technical standpoint, everyone on my team is smarter than I am technically. I'm leading, right, with the soft skills, the coaching, the mentoring,
Right.
for what's next when I'm not
Right.
doing that part anymore, Monica, right, which is what I owe the company.
Sure.
So do you have takeaways, Monica? I don't know if can I say some of the companies you work
Sure.
with or no?
Absolutely.
So she's working with Space Force. I mean,
A space company?
Space Force, which is the new agency of the federal government.
She loves astronauts.
Well, you know that.
These are
Like
my official
that?
astronauts. She
No,
used
I
to pay
know.
homage to Anne because of...
That is just wicked smart.
That's crazy wicked smart.
And yeah, well, I'll let you say some of the larger companies, but I stand incredibly impressed and amazed, and lucky for them to have your team. But when you're at that level, and you're speaking to smaller businesses here, and you're a smaller size business as far as team members, what have you learned? So you're like in the inner sanctum, and you're doing organizational assessments with employees, like so managers, middle managers, and down to the early entry workforce, and you have access to the leadership. Do you have any takeaways? Like, have you learned one or two insights that you're like, wow, well, you're either just like the rest of us, or, oh, here's how you got to where you are, and we need to learn that?
Oh, wow. There's lots of insights that I have gained in
Maybe
my
you can't
28
share
years
them all on a
of the
podcast,
company.
yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is that, and I think, Anne, you hit on it earlier, is people are people. And sometimes leaders, forget that, and they, charge forward, and they, have these goals, and they're working at this higher level, and they forget to communicate downwards. They forget to engage and involve their employees in decisions that are made that affect them.
Right.
And so, without that communication, without that follow through, without that coaching that they do for their employees start to get frustrated,
Right.
and they may start to lose trust in their leadership and the organization. And if you start to lose trust, that's the foundation of every relationship. And I think we all would agree to that, right? And if you believe in Lencioni's work, the 5 behaviors of an effective team,
Right.
Lencioni says that is the foundation of every relationship and every organization.
Couldn't agree more.
You don't get to great results. You don't get to growth and development as a company or as an organization unless you acknowledge how important trust is and how important the employee is. And so I think sometimes we get so busy as leaders that we start to forget the building blocks of what got us there in the first place.
Of a relationship, Monica.
Of a relationship.
It's a basic, and I try to say to people, think about your best relationships. What makes it your best relationship? Might be with your mom, might be with your sib, might be with your bestie. But what are those tenets? And you have to be who you are across your entire life, right? I'm not somebody when I get to Universal that I'm a different person.
Right,
I'm bringing
right.
100% of who I am authentically with me.
Absolutely.
And that's essential to a real relationship, which is foundational with trust.
So we do crisis PR as well as traditional public relations. In 2022, we had 3 clients with merger and acquisitions communication. So the strategy and the execution and all the writing that goes with that. But very interesting, the biggest of the 3, which was being sold an ownership stake to a multi-billion-dollar Japanese firm. And the CEO has said, in a prior M&A, we didn't have a strategy, we didn't do anything, and it didn't serve us well. And it was interesting, to your point, Monica, the very first group of stakeholders that has to understand clearly what's going on are the employees. Mm-hmm. I said, it isn't the media, and it isn't your clients. It's your team, because if they end up going into church on Sunday or Little League Monday night and a neighbor says, hey, I heard your company was just sold, and they weren't told, if you want to talk about distrust and all of a sudden feeling devalued, like you didn't tell the very people whose career and livelihood depends on that. But conversely, when they know that they are the first ones thought of, the first ones to receive this honest, clear communication, they're going to stay. They're going to work even harder and make sure this transition is smooth. But just putting them first and remembering that you're not a company without them.
Absolutely. And that really connects with change management. So that's a service that we provide to organizations, whether it be a small department within a company or it be the enterprise-wide, is companies have to change. They have to change and evolve in order to survive, right? And so people don't like change, and employees don't like change. And if they don't understand the why behind the change, they get very frustrated and they tend to leave. So what we say when we're doing change management, the number one thing that a leader needs to do is communicate, and communicate the why behind what is happening, and engage the employees in part of the decision making if you can. Get their input as to how to roll things out, how to integrate these companies, how to do some of the operational elements that they're going to so need when they do this merger. So it's back to that. It's recognizing that people are people. Every individual needs to, as adults, we need to know why we're doing something. We're not children. We need to have that information from our employer. And if we're not trusted enough with that information, then we don't feel that we can trust them. Right. And so when we don't trust them, we don't bring our whole selves to work. We hold back our productivity. We hold back our thoughts.
Well, that's like that quiet quitting.
Yes.
When you just
you project what they think, what you think they want to see.
Yes.
And I'm obsessed with why, Monica. And every day, if there's anything I'm saying, I say, here's why. So you have to understand that. And who has more of a linear impact than frontline employees when
Right.
a company
Yes,
is sold,
yes.
merged, or otherwise, right? Their very livelihood. So it's something where one eye is on, well, what if they don't retain me and I got to find a job, which is a part-time job in itself, finding
Right.
another job. And so it starts to erode, right? To your exact point, that base of trust. And we all know who we trust and who we don't trust.
Yes,
And you can
absolutely.
feel it. It almost permeates every single aspect. And those frontline employees are doing the work.
Right.
Disrupt that. And what did someone really buy? What did they really merge with, right? And change is like, ooh.
Nobody likes change.
Ooh.
It's difficult,
Well,
right?
think of the
difficult.
level of anxiety the employees coming into
Sure, it's
to,
fear.
to work
Changes
with.
everything.
Yeah, fear is not a good productive emotion if you're coming to work, and you don't want your team to be fearful. So, empowering them and making sure they understand that you have released them to use their full capabilities to serve your company is necessary. You have to do that.
The other critical piece to that, Anne, is part of what you were saying, is that the employees often know the answers because they do it
Yes,
every
yes.
day.
They
Yes.
sure do.
And if we don't talk to them, if
Right.
we don't gain their feedback, if we don't hear their input, and we don't give them an opportunity to communicate back with us in a fair and impartial way, then we're never going to really know what's going on.
Right.
And so that's part of the core of those assessments that we do. We're doing a organization-wide assessment for the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs right now, and looking at their workforce, particularly in those veterans' homes. And we're in a workforce crisis right now, you know, as a country.
100%.
And, you know, these are very important employees that work in these nursing homes for these veterans. And, you know, it's a difficult job to hire for. It's, you know, competitively, it's difficult even in the private sector. Now you're talking about putting it in a public sector. And they're trying to get the answer to, you know, how do we bring people in here? How do we retain our employees? How do we celebrate our employees? And pay and benefits is one aspect, but they are limited in terms of what they can do because of laws and regulations and union contracts. And so there are so many other ways that you can engage and involve your employees and really bring them to the table. And that's what we're discovering right now. We're out there doing focus groups, 60 focus groups with hundreds of people across the state, across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to learn those secrets and give them back to the leadership of DMV. I applaud them because they're willing to hear it.
Yep.
They're willing to learn. They're willing to listen. And that information is going to be, you know, actualized in action plans and different things that they're going to do to really drive that engagement in the future.
And I think that the key distinction I hear in that, Monica, and I try to preach this, is that the VA is saying, why us? That fundamental, why should you work here? And so what do we do in employment ads? We just table stakes, right? Here's the hourly, here's the benefits.
Here's a huge bonus.
That has nothing to do with the spirit we're trying to capture.
The emotional connection to
The
company.
emotional soft skills. And when women say, oh, I'm a nurturer, oh, I don't like conflict, I think, yes, that those are things that might be more difficult for women, but you have to weaponize what's phenomenal about that. Right? I mean, we can minimize or amplify anything about ourselves with the right self-awareness and introspection. And so it's so much more than, you know, table stakes of here's the employee. And whenever I'm talking about something, I'm at the department I love now, I put them with probably 4 to 6 employees away from me and say, you ask them, A, what it's like to be on my team, what it's like to be at Universal, what are the challenges, what are the like that, when you put your key in the door, if they put their key in the door, which you really don't anymore. But what is the essence we're trying to capture? And that's why I'm fascinated by you, because that's not easy.
No.
Simple, but not easy. And that, to me, is that emotional capital of the why.
Right.
It's the intangible. You're not going to be able to write that. Yeah. You're going to need something sticky enough to get an audience with the people that go, here's why. Right? Which is what I'm trying to do. Right. So I'm fascinated by that. Yeah. And you ask. People say, how do you know that? Well, I ask. I just ask.
Yeah.
Right.
There's so much I don't know.
Well, and kudos to the leadership that they're willing to hear
Yes.
whatever findings you bring back to them, which may or may not be what they expect.
Right. Right. And this is why they're doing it with an
Yeah.
independent company.
Right.
Right. So that they can hear the voices. And we've done everything that we can to help support the anonymity of the employees, to
right.
give them a voice, to give them the ability to share openly
Right,
what's challenging about working there and what's positive about working there. So let's not forget that they're doing something well. Right? Already. And there are positives in a work culture as well. So we want to bring those things out as well so that those are proliferated, whether it be a particular site or a particular leadership, philosophy or culture that they've tried to create in a certain, arena. We want to make sure we're celebrating those things too. So it's not all about picking apart all the things that are wrong. It's also looking for what's right and making sure we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so
You're
to speak.
empowering them.
Yes.
You're doing exactly what it takes to build a trust and a
Right.
foundation. And there's absolutely no way. When someone tells me they have the perfect marriage, I run screaming from them.
Yes.
Yeah,
There is no
there's-
perfect relationship anywhere.
That's it. And so look, I'm voting with my life and my bond and my word, but there's things I adore. There's things I ignore. But it's absolutely
That could be your business vitamin. Yeah.
right. No, rock solid. And I do think I just think, Monica, without sort of saying here's where we could improve. I mean, nothing's perfect.
Right.
You can't say this is a perfect place to work. What? It's work.
That's what growth is.
Yes.
Right? So the other
point.
key piece, though, is as a part of that growth process, you have to be self-reflective. As a leader, you have to know where your growth opportunities are.
Right.
And it could be in your soft skill delivery. It could be in your emotional intelligence. It could be, in your drive to get tasks done that you're forgetting about the people. And
There's a deadline, everybody.
And we
better
see
be
that
aware
all the
when
time.
you look in the mirror. Yep.
I recently facilitated a team retreat with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission actually this week. And, there's so much task orientation to do things. Sometimes we forget about the team members and what they need from us in order to be able to perform what we're asking them to do. And, recognizing that, having the humility as a leader to say, you know what, I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, and being able to communicate that to your team member to say, you know what, I mess up all the time. I'm not a perfect person. And, I recognize that maybe I'm not doing everything that you need. What do you need from me? What can I do better? And having that honest conversation with your employees to really pull that out of them as to how you can improve, how you can actually, work with them and grow them as an employee in a better way. You're not going to hear that if you're not asking.
Amen. And that's where I think the confidence and the self-awareness and the ability to be realistic in terms of how we're identifying. And look, we all need to be put back on the rails.
Yes.
Right? We all get out of our lane and we lose our way a little bit, and you need those people that are going to absolutely like that get you back on the rails and focus, and that's perspective.
Now, Monica, we'll see. We're flying through this.
She looked at the time herself.
That's the first
You go,
time
girl.
I did.
Yes.
We talked a little earlier because you spend so much time in a deep dive with organizations, and you see firsthand the changing workforce and the implication that means for the CEO and for the team, and how difficult it is to hire and retain. But how many generations do we have, and what was your comment to me about the newest generation coming into the workplace?
So we have 5 generations in the workplace right now.
Wow.
And we know that the millennial generation is really almost at a point of overtaking the baby boomers in the workplace. So what that means is that the younger generations, if you think about think about the millennials, as well as the Z generation, which is the newer generation, it's just coming out of college, it's just coming out of high school.
20-something.
Yeah,
to
20-somethings,
30-something.
right.
Okay.
They're 16 to 20-somethings right now. So some of them are even too young to be in the workplace. But as these generations come in, they need different things. They require a lot more feedback. They require a lot more affirmations, confirmations.
Right.
If they don't hear from you, they assume they're doing something wrong. which is a very different mindset than the boomer generation. If I hear from you, I'm scared, right?
Right.
We are now
That's really interesting.
You know, so
That's true.
It's completely different. And so not only do they require a lot of feedback, but they also require a lot of flexibility. They want a workplace in which they can work from home, in which they can use technology to drive, their performance. And so what we're seeing is people in that generation are frustrated with these dogmas, especially after COVID, of organizations saying everybody has to come back into the workplace or everybody has to be here at least 3 days a week. For what? Some organizations require in person because you need to, have somebody to serve
banks,
you at a restaurant or whatever it is. But to the extent that we can provide the flexibility to the workforce is really going to solve a lot of issues.
Right.
And recognizing that when we don't allow that flexibility and we say we don't trust you to work from home, you trusted me for 2 years during the pandemic. Now the pandemic's over, you don't trust me now.
Yeah.
Bingo.
It then creates this rift between leaders and the workforce. And we're seeing it just about in every organization we're working with, whether it's private or public or nonprofit. To the extent that you can provide flexibility, you can provide different kinds of schedules. You should be managing to the work and not the work hours. What are you accomplishing?
Manage to the work, not the work hours.
Yeah. So what are you accomplishing? What are your goals? What do we want you to get done? Does it matter if I do it in 39 hours or I do it in 60 hours? I don't care as long as it gets done.
It doesn't matter if you do it at
And
10
did
o'clock
you do
or
it
midnight
well?
after the kids are in bed and baths and food right?
Right.
You measure the quality of the work. You measure the quantity of the work. You measure the outputs and not, the ingredients therein. Because that's micromanagement. And, when we think about the boomer generation, we grew up with micromanagement and we tend to micromanage still. And so
what is it? That's that command and control mentality.
Yes, it's the autocratic
and that has
leadership.
Totally changed now.
And now we're really looking more at servant leadership, right?
Yeah.
Servant leadership where we care about our people. We're thinking about what our people need first, rather than just the goals and objectives of the organization. Leaders have to keep both in mind. I mean, we can't operate if we're not profitable. We can't operate if we're not achieving the goals of the company. So by no means am I saying and letting leaders off the hook or letting the organization off the hook for strategic growth. But we have to do it smart, and we have to use our people to do so.
Can't get better than that for the ending, Ann.
I know.
It's extraordinary.
Monica Gould, we're so honored that you would spend this 30 minutes, maybe an inch.
Absolutely illuminating.
Oh, yes.
Incredible. Just
Thank
the
you.
Perspective, right? The right sizing as a leader brain. And there's always things we can learn. And I learned so much in 30 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes.
Maybe we'll do it again.
Yes, we said no. Every guest, it's a requirement too. So thank you for coming, Annie Carnathan. Great day, and have a high geared day to all of our listeners and viewers that are watching this on video. Thanks for listening. It's our desire that these stories will bring energy, ideas, and fresh thinking that you can use today. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. And have a high geared day.